And if you say a word about this over the radio, the next wings you see will belong to the flies buzzing over your rotting corpse.
A 90s action film where a bunch of prisoners are transported by air to a new prison. But not just any prisoners, apparently all of the really cool ones. This plane holds the worst of the worst, but you know, even Ryanair had to start somewhere.
Welcome to Con Air.
Fuck you, pig. Gag and bag this Nazi muffin.
Con Air is a 1997 action film directed by Simon West that put Nick Cage in a cage with lots of other fun actors, which made everyone lift their game, and also it made Nick Cage put on a thick accent.
Cause this boy's coming home to his ladies. Coming home forever.
Depending on how you reacted to the film, it's either a terrible movie, a great movie, a guilty pleasure, a guilty plea, or the middle act of a Nick Cage marathon of The Rock, Con Air and Face Off. I'll go with it as a movie that's an awful lot of fun, but also an awful lot of stupid. You couldn't normally fit so much stupid in one movie, so you have to design a custom-designed stupid container, or a bespoke stupitorium. In this case, the stupitorium is an ill-advised prisoner transport flight.
And then somehow managed to stick us right smack in the middle.
Just a note to viewers, in the introduction to this video we referenced low-cost European airline Ryanair. When writing this review, we considered using an American carrier with a generally negative reputation, and our research came up with Spirit or Frontier, but as I have personally never flown either when in the US, I felt it was better to stick to an airline that I actually had flown on. Ryanair popularised the term nickel and diming with travellers from a continent that uses neither nickels nor dimes.
Funny fucker, aren't you?
But of course for US-based viewers, you can substitute whichever airline has given you the most grief. Or for Canadian viewers, Air Canada's got your back. They've also got your bags, so you're never seeing them again.
Don't you think that's strange?
In Con Air, Nick Cage is former Army Ranger Cameron Poe, jailed for manslaughter after a fight outside a bar. He serves his sentence and is granted a parole. Poe's given a spot on a flight run by the US Marshals used to transport prisoners to a new Supermax prison in Alabama. Once the flight lands, he's home and free. But until then, he's just another prisoner, along with his friend Baby O, who of course is diabetic and in desperate need of his injections. The problem is that most of the rest of the inmates are not about to be released. They are the worst of the worst, so worst that some of them have nicknames like
Billy Bedlam, Diamond Dog, Cyrus the Virus.
Look, I too have a nickname down the pub, Shrapnel, which dates back to the one and only time I played darts. The plot of Con Air is really simple. Take these worst of the worst prisoners being transported and, wouldn't you know it, have them take over the plane in a bid for freedom. There are some other people trying to stop them. It sounds pretty ordinary so far. The US Marshals who oversee the prisoner transport are represented by Vince Larkin, who's constantly butting heads with DEA agent Malloy.
Fuck you.
The DEA have an agent on board who's trying to get a fellow inmate to talk, and of course the agent is armed despite the ban on firearms in the cabin of the plane, dubbed Jailbird.
My, as I look around, I see a lot of celebrities among us. I see 11 current affairs, 2 hard copies, and a genuine Geraldo interviewee.
This being that sort of film, we are introduced to a bunch of villains and given a rundown. There's the mastermind of the escape, Cyrus Grissom,
AKA Cyrus the Virus.
He's a chaotic genius of sorts working with Diamond Dog,
The day of the dog begins.
Bedford, Pinball, and later on Cindino, who's bankrolling the operation as part of his own bid for freedom.
Likes to brag that he killed more men than cancer.
Okay.
There's also Johnny 23 and eventually serial killer Garland Green, who's killed a lot of people.
Without me, you got nobody to fly the plane.
I never think that far ahead.
Poe tries to keep his head down, but the Ranger in him takes over, protecting the guards from attacks from the inmates, and he's worrying about his diabetic friend. But when he's given a chance to leave the plane, Poe sticks around out of a sense of duty to protect his friend and the hostages.
Now what would my daughter think of me if I left you like this to get dishonored and die?
Larkin tries to negotiate with Cyrus the Virus. I mean, we all know his name is Grissom, but Cyrus the Virus, I mean, man, it rhymes. It's so much more memorable that way. Like Phyllis with Syphilis or Daniel the Spaniel. And stretching this joke way too far, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the 8,000 board modem.
What's that supposed to mean?
Meanwhile, a pit stop to onboard new prisoners doesn't go so well for Pinball, who gets caught up in the landing gear. Later on, Poe finds Pinball's body in the hold, and before disposing of it, leaves a message for Larkin. It does seem like there's not a lot to be gained by explaining all of the action scenes. Just watch the film for yourself. This stuff is enjoyable enough, but it all climaxes with the Jailbird crash landing on the Las Vegas Strip. Poe and Larkin on motorbikes chase down the remaining escapees, all of whom meet a sticky end. I mean, if nothing else, they are sort of cleaning up the streets, but realistically it'll be some poor schlub with a fire hose who will do the real cleaning up after all of this.
Well, shoot that piece of shit!
And after all of that, the serial killer, Green, built up as the scariest inmate on the flight, seemed mellow, and the audience is happy that he's now a free man.
Yeah, this one's dead. We better get him out of here.
Con Air is a movie that proves that one man's trash is another man's treasure. Look, I'll just go with my earlier assessment. It's fun and stupid. Go into the movie expecting that, and that's what you'll get.
Make a move and the bunny gets it.
Director Simon West had been working in Britain as a director of commercials and music videos, where, among others, he directed the video for Rick Astley's single Never Gonna Give You Up. History does not record if Never Gonna Give You Up is a song about Ryanair's carry-on baggage charges. Con Air was his first feature as director, and here he manages a good job of giving us readable action. It's like a more understated version of a Michael Bay film.
How?
Calling Con Air understated may sound weird, but we mean it's understated relative to a film directed by Michael Bay.
On any other day, that might seem strange.
Producer Jerry Bruckheimer had launched his solo production company with Con Air, where it marked the start of a long stretch of producing very successful films, often for Disney and mostly in the action genre.
These are interesting facts.
In Con Air, we have a script that managed to be less over the top than The Rock
That's a rock.
and ranks slightly lower on the Stamfine Idiot Scale, which is a device we have that measures the level of idiocy in movie scripts. The script was in constant flux during shooting, leading to many of the cast to comment on what a difficult production it was in general. Script rewrites continued throughout shooting. Some cast members would eventually improvise their own lines. There had already been a fatality during the production of the film. But fortunately, Con Air ended up as being one of those movies where the final result managed to gel into something entertaining.
We're going to Disneyland.
You're lying, Cyrus.
So are you, Vince.
Even without a lockdown script, it really is the cast that makes this worth watching. John Malkovich as Cyrus Grissom, seems to be playing a toned-down version of the Joker. He's not half as crazed as his reputation is built up to be.
Then we take out the lab, creating a trap, an airtight cage filled with lots and lots of dead people.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily like to sit next to him on a flight, and certainly not this flight.
Not only did you not save this dude's life, you done made best friends with Cyrus the damn virus.
Not everybody in this movie is somebody you'd recognize, but a lot of the cast are, hey, isn't that, There's Ving Rhames as Diamond Dog, a dude who's just really angry. Dave Chappelle's corpse being shoved out of an airplane and crashing into a car below. Danny Trejo not being the scariest guy in the room. Steve Buscemi playing a guy who you think's going to be some scary Uber threat, but just ends up more chilled than chilling. Rachel Ticotin as a guard on a plane, Monica Potter as Poe's wife, Colm Meaney takes a break from his day job on Deep Space Nine to play a DEA agent, getting in many of the film's best swear lines.
This is a situation that needs to get unfucked right now!
John Cusack seems to have drawn the short straw as the guy with almost no discernible character, other than to be slightly smarter than Colm Meaney's character.
Glad we didn't shoot it down, huh?
Oh yeah, it worked out much better this way.
But of course, this is a Nick Cage movie, from the era of good but stupid Nick Cage movies.
Sweet bird of freedom.
The ones that are unabashedly stupid, but fun stupid. Like the movie The Dark Knight Rises if Tom Hardy had huffed helium before every take.
How good of you to join us!
Cage's character has grown his hair in prison. I say his hair, but this is the movie's. Though his accent has come in for criticism from many viewers, saying it's not particularly authentic or good.
I'm gonna show you God does exist.
I'm not an expert. It just feels like a little much. Now that Nick Cage is carrying the film on his own, he's playing the character fairly straight without needing to have all of the film's best lines.
What do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna save the fucking day.
He's often quite laid back, but intense. But laid back, but intense. Here's a guy who'll do anything just to get home.
I drove through 3 states wearing her head as a hat.
It's my daughter's birthday today. So please feel free not to share everything with me.
It's a 90s movie, so it's lots of loud people being loud, and even when they're not being loud, they're metaphorically wearing Hawaiian shirts at a funeral. And some of it has not particularly stood the test of time very well. Much like my high school yearbook, where I was voted most likely to be eaten by a shark. Well, to the naysayers, as of this moment, I clearly have not been eaten by a shark. It was, however, touch and go with the octopus.
You okay? No. Good.
Con Air has solid production value. The plane sets look cool, and the exterior shots of the jailbird or the attack helicopters add to the excitement. The camera work is full of nice shots, but rarely does the film go for super flashy, fast cuts to distract from the fact that the script is a puddle on the floor that the actors are valiantly trying to mop up.
Sunsets are beautiful. Newborn babies are beautiful. This is fucking spectacular.
As Las Vegas was in the middle of its transformation, the film was able to film its climactic crash scene just as the Sands Hotel was about to be demolished anyway. This sort of synergy happens on movies way more often than you think. I mean, did you really think they blew up the Death Star? No, they waited until it was going to be replaced by an even more powerful Death Star. Con Air uses a number of real planes augmented with scale models. There's a lot of things blowing up in the movie. I mean, in these sorts of films, you pay good money to see things blowing up or people getting shot or squashed or Dave Chappelle's lifeless corpse slamming into the car of the guy from Stargate. Con Air was released in June of 1997, where it did good business. Audiences enjoyed it enough at the time for what it was and then moved on. Con Air is one of those 90s action movies that has reached the status of classic. It's no Hudson Hawk, but what is? While many of the cast were down on the movie while they were filming, they seem happy enough now that the film has found an appreciative audience, and an audience that keeps growing.
Love your work.
The late 90s was when Nick Cage movies were summer faves that were financially successful, hated by critics, loved by popcorn manufacturers, disliked by people looking for order in their action movies, liked by people who just wanted to see shit blow up, weirded out by Cage's regionally questionable accent, enjoyed seeing Dave Chappelle thrown from a plane, or just interested in John Malkovich as a relatively restrained supervillain. I mean, sure, any one of those things can give you joy.
Bunch of idiots dancing on a plane to a song made famous by a band that died in a plane crash.
Con Air is a film that I'd never actually seen until now. No, seriously. As far as over-the-top 90s action movies, it's fine, especially in the area of high-octane, high-concept thriller. Simon West would go on to a career of helming lots of action films. Jerry Bruckheimer would rule the box office for the few weeks his many films sat at or near the top of the box office. And Nick Cage would put out action movie after action movie before hitting a wall, after which his accent in Con Air would be the least of his problems. Cage's 90s filmography seemed to have a thing about Las Vegas. He jumped out of a plane dressed as Elvis for Honeymoon in Vegas, won an Oscar for Best Actor for Leaving Las Vegas, and in Con Air destroyed an iconic Vegas landmark. He must be stopped. There are dumb movies and movies that think they're smart, where people say dumb things really loudly.
What's wrong with him?
My first thought would be alive.
Con Air is a dumb movie that knows what it is, but does it very well. It's dated really poorly in places, but then so did my prom date. My piano teacher, Mrs. Morley. To have known you 50 years earlier. So, in the final analysis, the positives and negatives of flying Con Air are as follows. Well, cheap flights, but there's no choice of seat, there's a high probability of crash landing, a high probability of being seated next to a murderer, high likelihood of a fight breaking out in the cabin, or just being killed. Though, when you compare it to Ryanair, it does seem much of a muchness. The film is a fun, over-the-top action movie that let audiences in on the joke, has a mostly great cast, and will forever taint the way you look at planes transporting the worst of the worst on one flight.
Why couldn't you put the bunny back in the box?
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Nobody on this aircraft gives a flying fuck. Get it? Flying fuck? Thank you. I'm here all week.